by AdCanada Media.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of Local Edge, your show for better understanding and connecting with small communities in Canada. This is the place where we explore the value of these markets to advertisers, agencies, communities, and so much more. We bring you the latest news, insights, and trends from the world of local advertising and marketing. I'm your host, Shawna Randolph, and the theme for this episode, the data approach to localized Canadian ad campaigns. You're going to be learning how data sets can identify new and existing markets for advertisers to get the best localized bang for their campaigns. So, whether you are an agency, advertiser, community member, or just somebody interested in the world of local advertising, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
In Manitoba, rural households spend approximately $61 per capita annually on hospital care, nursing homes, and other residential services. Are you targeting Manitoba's healthcare market? AdCanada Media offers precision targeting to help you aim your message to reach the community markets, rural or urban, that spend the most, thus optimizing your return on advertising investment in Manitoba and elsewhere. Whether you're focused on healthcare providers, senior services, or related sectors, we have the insights to maximize your advertising impact. Visit adcanadamedia.ca to learn more.
Joining us this time is the CEO of AdCanada Media, Jeff Beardsworth, and Jordena Kraut. She is Director of Media and Online Marketing with 6P Marketing. Hi, you two.
Hey, Charlotte.
Okay, everybody, in our last episode, you recall we showcased great examples of ad campaigns using localized creative to really connect with local audiences. So now, how does an agency or advertiser reach the best audience? I'll tell you, by using effective data sets to identify new and existing markets. We're going to get into that. Jordena, let's start with you first. How important is using data to plan where to place ads and with which publications?
Oh, data is probably like the first step that we go at all the time when it comes to our campaigns, because I need to know how many farmers are in this market, who's the audience in it, and I find that AdCanada helps me with the preliminary parts of getting that data, and then we take it a little step further, and then we look at it through either sometimes it's our geofencing or Canada Post data that we get, or we even go farther and look at our Google data. So we're often trying to kind of piece information together. I wish there was a one-stop shop for data, but I haven't found it yet.
Okay, as a media buyer, then can you share with us what data sources you use, how it's helped you as well?
So we look at things like geography, and we look at and when we were doing our targeting, so we have our targeting measurements of like adults or women, men, 25 to 34. So that's often one of the things that I'll bring up to my reps and say, I'm looking for this product, I'm looking for farmers, I'm looking for mining, I'm looking for like whatever the subject matter of my client is that we're trying to target, then I feed that over to my reps. And then they kind of go, oh, well, we can look at it from here and here and here. And there are these special publications, there's these special print pieces, and they start narrowing it down. And then we start narrowing it down by geography. And then, of course, we come back to the big B word, which is budgets, because I can't do everything. But I think a huge shift in some of my ag planning really stemmed from a lot of the data that we got from AdCanada when it came to farms and farm counts and how many farms are in each region. And really, that really allowed us, and there's sometimes even more data, like how many are there in cattle farmers versus wheat farmers, and we can go down subcategories if we need to get that information, and then that kind of really helps us find where we need to be, because oftentimes there are places I can reach through digital media, but then I can't reach anywhere else. The only other way I can reach them is through rural media. And so sometimes that's radio, but most of the time that's rural print. And that's where I get to tell my stories in there. So my data is kind of multi-layered in its approach. But we're always looking for as much data as we can get.
Okay, so let's bring Jeff into this. Jeff, AdCanada, of course, Media has a variety of data sets. How about you taking us through some examples?
First thing, Shawna, and Jordena hit the nail on the head. If you're going to be successful in media today, you absolutely have to be invested in data. We live in a data-driven world. Data drives every decision we make. And it's not just which newspaper am I going to buy or what website am I going to advertise on. You think about your daily life, right? It's like, well, where am I going to buy my potatoes this week? Where am I going to, go on a holiday? Data drives absolutely everything. So, for us, we've been heavily invested in data for many years. And, I guess the challenge now is to keep up with the data that is being required by people like Jordena when it comes to making their decisions. And that's kind of where we're at, right? So we've developed, as you mentioned, some proprietary tools that are designed to give a way to analyze these markets, for people like Jordena, the ability to identify markets that maybe they've never heard of before, or regions that they didn't expect represented potential. And from there, they can kind of assess what we're putting together and make decisions that, fit within a budget or fit within a client's campaign objectives. And at the end of the day, that's how the magic kind of results in a campaign getting put together.
Okay, so then let's use this magic that you're talking about and show us behind the scenes.
I can do that. So, Shawna, if you can imagine, I'll describe a little bit about what this all looks like. But if you can imagine thousands of different data points spread out on a map, right? And behind each one of those data points is demographic information, psychographic information, spending information of all of the people that live behind that data point. And then from there, you want to geofence some specific geography. Maybe it's a sales territory. Maybe it's a trade area or a newspaper coverage area. And you want to lift that data that is specific to that geofenced area. And you want to take a look at what goes on inside that area. Maybe it's, in Jordena's reference, the number of farms. Maybe you want to see how many farms. Maybe you want to see what types of trees grow in that area. Maybe you want to see how much money is being spent on hearing aids. Those are the types of tools, or those are the types of data that we can pull together for a client that they can then use to gain insights on a region, or maybe it's a coverage area of a newspaper, to decide whether or not that publication fits a criteria or fits an objective or doesn't. So, I'll do a quick demo here. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So, here's an idea of just how many data sets are available. And behind each one of these data sets, I'll just pick one. The StatsCan 2022 census labor force data. So we want to get a sense for what kind of information could we, if we needed to, supply a client with that they can then use to help identify where should they be sending this message out. So within the labor force data set, you've got information that gets as deep as, obviously there's the information, what type of industry does a person work in, right? And there's the information like law, social, education, they work in sales, trades, transport, agriculture. But you can even get as deep as what type of mode of transportation does a person take to get to work? Now, I don't know why a planner would need that, but the information does exist. And it gets as deep as, what time do people leave to go to work? How long does it take them to get to work? So that gives you a sense of just how comprehensive, if you're in the database, or you're in the data business rather, just how comprehensive and how deep some of these rabbit holes can get in terms of gathering the data first and foremost, and then actually using it to make some decisions. So, if I was to do an example here real quick, Jordena's mentioned, farmers and the need to reach farmers with some of her campaigns. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. So you can see here, I've selected a couple of databases that relate to farming. From here, we may want to drill a little bit deeper into the farming data sets. And in this case, we'll take a look at, okay, we want to identify where are the farms first and foremost. Jordena's already touched on it. For some of their campaigns, they want to be targeting specifically farmers. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, Jordena's client actually needed to target not only farms, but needed to target dairy farms. Okay, so we'll identify dairy farms as a potential target for this mock campaign as well. Now, Jordena is based in Winnipeg. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, Jordena knows Manitoba but like the back of her hand. But she needs to execute this campaign not just in Manitoba, but she might need to execute it in Ontario or Alberta, British Columbia. And she may not have a sense for the geographies or what's happening farming-wise in some of these other provinces. So again, we'll take this example right to the max, and we'll select every province in Canada, because we want to look at newspaper options or print options everywhere in Canada. And from here, we'll pull the results for her. And you can see over here to the right, the first data set that we've introduced in this particular example is farm count data. And on the left here, you can see that we've got every community newspaper in Canada coming up in the report based on the number of farms that are within their particular coverage area. And then the column obviously to the right of that would once again be, okay, we've identified farms, but now we want to see what newspapers are going to be targeting specifically dairy farms. Okay, so there's just kind of a quick example, Shawna, of the type of technology that exists out there when it comes to helping advertisers identify where is my target market. I know who I want to reach. I just don't know necessarily geographically where those people live. And I guess from there, if I'm going to consider newspapers as part of this campaign, what would be the best option? So if we were to stick with the farmer example, and Jordena has mentioned, budget, the importance of budget, and maybe Jordena's budget allows for the inclusion of 10 newspapers. Okay, 10 newspapers that target farms. We've got the ability to just run down a list and say, okay, the best newspapers in Canada for reaching farms, if that's our target, would be down to about here. So our job from here would be to provide Jordena or any client with an estimate or a proposal that is based on, the top 10 newspapers for reaching farms.
Okay, Jeff, there's a lot of numbers here, and it's really compelling how it's all broken down, but you have other more visual ways to portray data to your clients, right?
We do. So there's the tabular data, which allows us to quantify and qualify each newspaper based on their ability to reach a target market. Some clients, and this includes myself as well, we like to see data visually. So another technique that we use a lot is based on heat mapping. Okay, now once again, imagine that data being put on a map, and then we've got the ability to lift it based on some targeting criteria that aligns to the objectives for a campaign. So what we're looking at here, Shawna, is data placed on a map. And we're looking at a geography or a region here that is southern Alberta, southeastern British Columbia, southwestern Saskatchewan. But what we're mapping in this case is average annual household expenditures on airline travel. So let's just say Jordena worked with a client that had some relevance to the airline industry or the travel industry. So in this case, Jordena might identify that a target audience would be one that tends to spend money on airplane travel, going somewhere. Okay, so we could provide mapping technology using heat mapping, heat density mapping, that identifies where in this particular region the airline travel is actually occurring, and the households that are actually spending the money on traveling on an airplane. So we can see here that there appears to be a fair amount of airline travel expenditures happening in the Calgary region. There's obviously a fair amount of it that's happening up in Edmonton. There's some going on a little to the west here. So that's kind of an interesting view. But if we wanted to, we could actually zero in a little bit more to get some detail. And I'll just take it down even closer to ground level here. So that area of spending that we were looking at that happens in and around Calgary, when you expand the view, you can actually see that it's occurring not necessarily within the city of Calgary, but it's actually occurring to an area just to the west of Calgary. Okay, now we could get really, really detailed with our map just by changing the view. But let's look at it from this perspective here. So we now know that the spending on airline travel that is happening around Calgary looks to be occurring in an area around Bragg Creek. There's some areas down here, White Elk, Two Guns. So we now know where our audience lives. So from here, there's a few things that we can do, Shawna, to help kind of identify what the newspaper options might be. Let's say we've decided that we want to target the people who live in that area that are spending money on airline travel. So we put our concentric circle that captures, or we're geofencing, I guess, to put it another way. We're geofencing that spending on airline travel. So we've captured the geography that we want to reach. From here, we might want to go in and actually add a layer to our map that says, okay, now I want to look at all of the newspapers and see if there's a connection between a newspaper and my target geography. So let's add that layer of newspapers. So now we've got those coverage areas for all of the different newspapers that circulate in the region. And from here, we can say, okay, I want to know what newspapers do I need to consider to be reaching this particular group of airline travelers. And you can see here, here's our list. So the process for a client, or for Jordena in this case, might be to come to us and say, okay, we now know where the money is being spent on airline travel. We now know what publications exist in that area. Let's try and build a campaign around that list of newspapers. And again, that's where the magic happens. We've provided the client with the ability to make some decisions. And, as we know, budget's going to have an effect on this. But, when it comes right down to it, you need a starting point. And most importantly, you need a starting point that is based on some sort of data. And that's basically what we've got here.
That's a great overview, Jeff. I just kept thinking through it, though. Where do you get your data source from?
100% of our data comes, Shawna, from the StatsCan census, right? So the census, as we know, is done every 5 years. So the process for us, the challenge for us, is making sure that data that might have been collected in a census 5 years ago is being updated every year so that it's always relevant, right? So while the StatsCan census is the foundation of our data, we have suppliers that on an every year basis go through the model the data using things like inflation rates and consumer price indexes and those kinds of things. So we're always updating the data to reflect a current landscape, to make sure that clients like Jordena are always making decisions based on the most recent information that's out there. And
Jordena, you were mentioning AdCanada Media as one of your sources for data. So I bet advertisers, what we picked up from Jeff here, they're changing their approach often for who they're originally thinking of targeting after they've taken a good look at this data, correct?
Yeah. So often when we are pitching our clients our media products, I have to come back with saying this publication hits this amount of farms, this amount of people, this is the expenditures in that market. So I actually provide that information to the clients because they sign off on every piece of media that we purchase. So we want to make sure that we've given them all the information on why we're making those recommendations. And sometimes I have to go digging around in Census in Canada and StatsCan myself, and that's just a rabbit hole I don't enjoy going down. So it's great to have like this tool at our fingertips.
And Jeff, anything you want to touch on that you haven't?
Other than to say, I think given how quickly the online media platforms have emerged as data sources, and I got to tell you, they're very good. They have some very compelling, detailed information that, to most advertisers is definitely going to appeal to them in terms of that ability to connect an audience to a client's message. And I think the message that I would have would be that it's not just the online platforms that have the ability to provide that kind of information. I know from our perspective, huge investments have been made over the years in being able to provide the kind of information that advertisers need to make their decisions. I don't think it's just us that are making those kinds of investments. I think some of the other legacy media platforms are making the same investments. And the last thought would be for an advertiser not to assume that or not to have the perception that it's only the online platforms that are in the data business. Because the reality is we're all making investments to play in the same sandbox.
And Jeff, before we go, we've talked about this in previous episodes here. There is that connect, and then using this data, coming up with the creative campaigns is really effective for anybody who is advertising for newspapers because, as we talked about it, we have the digital form and the hard copy, both for clients.
What these e-editions and the emergence of e-editions have done, they've effectively increased the geo-fenced area that would represent the coverage area of the newspaper. So we're able to capture the data more effectively. Clients are able to reach their audiences in different ways. They're not solely reliant on the printed product, but they're more reliant on the traditional format of the newspaper. And that being, there's a huge percentage of people out there that prefer to read the printed version of the newspaper. There's a growing percentage of people who like to read the digital version of the printed newspaper. But what's most important is people really prefer the traditional format of the newspaper. So where that dovetails into this discussion is the fact that the audience is growing. The geo-fenced area that represents where these people live is growing. And at the end of the day, the client is able to get, a better sense of the audience that is represented by the newspaper's coverage.
Okay, so much to digest here before we go. How does everybody reach each of you, starting with you, Jordena?
I can be reached through 6P Marketing. It's Jordena, Jordena, at 6P marketing.com.
Okay, and Jeff?
And I'm Jeff at AdCanada Media, Jeff at adcanadamedia.ca, or, I don't get many phone calls anymore. It's all email, but my phone number is 780-989-4901.
All right, thank you for all of your insight. Both of you, appreciate it.
Thanks, Shawna.
Thank you.
From AdCanada Media, that is CEO Jeff Beardsworth and Jordena Kraut, Director of Media and Online Marketing with 6P Marketing.
In Ontario, rural households spend about $38 per capita annually on video game systems and accessories, while urban households spend approximately $35 per capita each year on these gaming essentials. Is your brand looking to tap into Ontario's gaming market? Want to see which communities are the hottest spots for gaming enthusiasts? AdCanada Media has the tools and expertise to target the communities where gaming enthusiasts live and play. Whether you're aiming for the latest console launch or digital downloads, our strategic insights can help you reach the right audience. Visit adcanadamedia.ca to learn more.
Thank you, everybody, for spending so much time with us here today on The Local Edge. Again, I am your host, Shawna Randolph, and to stay in tune with us, to access all of our episodes as well, just be sure to subscribe to the Local Edge podcast. It's on any of the major platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever you use. And don't forget to check out our website, adcanadamedia.ca. Thank you for joining us here on Local Edge. We will see you next time.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, visit our website at road55.ca.